In the words of the often misquoted Mark Twain, rumours of my death have been greatly exaggerated. And I'm referring to this Tucker here. He's had a dose of rat poison, or some sort of poison. They don't think it's an autoimmune, but his eye hemorrhaged and he was in a really bad way. He's been on a drip, but that was a month ago. And now he's just about recovered. He should have been born a cat because there's more stitches and scar tissue holding him together than there is normal skin, isn't there? Go on, fuck off now. Tucker's out on one of his first walks now since he's recovered from the rat poisoning. Just make it clear that we don't use rat poison. We don't know where he got it from. Sometimes he goes around the stone forest and there's pheasant feeders. I don't know if there's some rat boxes around there and the rats have scratted the poison out, or whether it was up on the moors a poisoned bird. It's not unknown for gamekeepers to poison raptors, buzzards, that sort of thing, and they are scavengers. All my dogs will eat anything that's like rotting or dead, and we think possibly they go back to it day after day. Every time you go up there they know where their little larder is and they go back to it. I think he might have got a poisoned bird and he just kept feeding on it. He really was in a bad way. We thought we'd lost him. I'd even got his little burial spot lined out in the garden. But there you are. After a month, 5 weeks of intensive care, he's got another life. The old rhododendrons we potted up, the coloured leafed ones, are looking quite well now. They're, I've got my shadow in the way. Yeah, they're doing fine. The camellias are healthy. They like it around the side of the house. They seem to thrive. Now, getting back to the failures, this is the Echium that I was growing. I waited 3 years. The third year it was meant to flower, but the frosts have got it. So, horticulturally speaking, it's fucked. But you never know. You never know. It was worth a try. They are lovely, big, bold spires of blue flowers. They can get up to about 10-12 foot. And I was hoping it would go up the side of this house, but I got that wrong. However, the Daphne, Jacqueline Postil, the scent from this is just beautiful. Yeah. There's certain scents, you know, that women used to wear. Well, I didn't wear them, but you know, use that. They're a very powerful effect they can have on you, can't they? There used to be, in the 70s, there was when I was a young man, about 15, 16, they used to have this perfume called Just Must. I don't know what it was about it, but as a young adolescent boy, it used to give me a stiffy. I couldn't understand it. quite embarrassing if you were like at school or at college and some of the girls were wearing this Just Muscle. It's very popular. I think I've overshared there. I don't think I should have said any of that. The young Viburnum Burkewoodii that I put in, it's another lovely scented flower, and that's got, you know, it's mid-February. Was it the 12th of February? And it's, the young plant has got these flower buds coming out, and it really is lovely. It's a shrub that likes the shade, but the scent is exquisite. I mean, it's not in the same realms as the Just Musk perfume I was telling you about, but and it no longer has that effect, unfortunately. But the actual, you know, the scent from it and the plant itself is really good. It's a plant I would always recommend. The other good thing to note, it's early on in the year, but it's nice to see that the Trilliums are coming through. You can see here they've really looking strong, and hellebores are starting to come up. I've got quite a lot of hellebores in here. It's they are one of my favourite flowers. That's another double white one. I'm hoping they're going to bulk up a bit this year. They were only put in last year, and they were in pots, and they were behind one of the polytunnels at Eggleston, and really they were just pot bound and in a terrible state, so they need a year or two to recover, but I've got quite a lot of hope for them. See, there's more Trilliums there. That's the Synthris. It's a lovely blue spring flower. Synthris, what is it, Missourianus. But right down, these are just odd little winter blooms. I could cut them off, because right down here in the crown of the plant here, you can see there's some lovely strong buds coming through. They're going to be beautiful in another few weeks. And of course there's the aconites, the winter aconites. I'll put the proper name, Eranthis, I think it is, Hamamelis. Oh, bloody hell, I can't remember. And these were put in again last year, if you remember. And the leucodiums, they're starting to come through. We're always going on about the snowflakes. I was just thinking about snowflakes. We haven't really had any snow. We've had a couple of really cold spells. No real snow this year. This is a strange country, the UK. We get 3 snowflakes and no fucker goes to work because I think they can't get out the house. It's just a British thing. Now look at this one. Another little hellebore. Isn't that lovely? Beautiful. Pittosporum. I can't remember what it is. I think it might be Tom Thumb, but it's one of Lisa's, and she likes these things. And she's always worried that they're not hardy enough, but that one's got through the cold spells fine. So hopefully it means I can get the other ones that are in pots planted out. There's more hellebores at the back. And of course, then there is Gelina, Hamamelis Gelina. I used to really like this because it was so different from the typical yellow one, like Arnold Promise. But now I'm not so sure if the colour's a little bit, I don't know. Is it nice? Let me know. Let me know if you think it's nice. I used to like it because it was so different, and now I just think it's a little bit on the dull side. Also, though, the autumn foliage colour on all the Hamamelis can be really good, so that's not to be sniffed at. Now, here. Oh, there's another little hellebore here. Beautiful little thing. Yeah, promiscuous little things. They will crossbreed really easily. That's just some cyclamen. I can't remember what they were. Now, just to give you a taste of something we will be doing, and I will show you how to do it, and hopefully it will work. This was a Katsura, Cicidophyllum, japonicum. It's one of the seedlings that I grew, and frankly, it didn't colour up well. You have to excuse the wind if it's a bit, not my wind, it's just a bit windy today. It didn't colour up well, and it didn't have any scent at all in the autumn. So I've effectively pollarded it. Now, over at Eggleston is a beautiful golden one. It was given to us by Geoffrey Smith. Geoffrey Smith was a gardening friend of mine. He was a very famous gardener. He was very much my mentor. And over the years, I've watched it grow in the churchyard at Eggleston, and it's the most beautiful golden colour. It's semi-weeping. But you can't grow it from seed, you would have to graft it, and I've never got around to doing it. So what I'm going to do here is I've chopped or pollarded this particular specimen, this useless one, off, and I intend to rind graft round here some pieces from the golden one at Eggleston. It's going to be hard to do because I'm going to have to get a cameraman to stand up on some steps or a bench to show the process, but we'll be doing that in 2 or 3 weeks time, and we'll see if we can get the grafts to take on the top. There's another little Daphne here. That's again another Jacqueline Postel. You can see that it's the bloom is not quite as advanced because it's freestanding in the garden, whereas the one I showed you earlier is not. It's against the side of the house. House is called Sunniside for a reason. It just gets lots of sun there, and it's warm, and you get the reflected heat. 1 or 2 little conifers are growing. I think, I don't need to think, I can look. This is Aby's Lucky Strike. I need the conifer nerd here to tell me about that one. I think it's a bit like Skylands. I think it's anyway. There's some more leucodium. They're a bit further advanced because they've been in the ground in this sort of like clump for a few years now, whereas some of the newer ones that I put in, they're still bulking up on these little borders. We'll see how the fruit trees take on this year. Again, there's plenty of bud on these pears. The apples, well, they're going to need pruning in and shaping and following the wires, but I'm hoping they're going to get away. I was a bit disappointed in the speed at which they grew last year. It could be that the ground is not great here, and there's a lot of hard ground behind where this sort of pier area is, but yeah, I was a bit disappointed, especially as they're on an M25 stock, so they should be more vigorous. I got them on that stock for that reason, because if they're in impoverished ground, you need to grow them on more than just a dwarfing or a semi-dwarfing rootstock. You would do that in exposed conditions. There's no point growing something on a 106 rootstock, which grows about 12 foot, in a really exposed position. You want to grow something on a much more powerful rootstock, so that compensates for the cold that will restrict the growth of a semi dwarfing plant. You know, after the Second World War, plants and trees, shrubs, and particularly seeds were very hard to come by, and gardeners in this country used to grow far more annuals to colour up their borders. They grew them in amongst the vegetable gardens, or they just grew them here and there. And one of the things I want to do in this garden this year is to put a few annuals around, because I need to cottage it up a bit, because it looks a little too formal. It's a bit too stylized. It's just a bit too rigid, and the annuals, you can just hoe out what you don't want and you can grow them. Now, the other thing that I'd like to do is grow a bed of annuals, and let me explain why. Now, last year in this area down here, this area was originally grass, but I had to dig it up when I redid the garden and put the paths in and various things. It just got dug over, and my intention was, well, it wasn't my intention, but Lisa asked if I would make sure that it was a grass area that went down nearly to the pond there. So to clean it up a bit, I grew some spuds in it last year, and some onions and some, I can't remember what else, some shallots, and there's a few skanky old leeks there that I'll pull out. They can be used, so there's nothing wrong with them. They're just like little finger thick. Anyway, this area here was going to be put down to grass this year, but I don't want to do that. I want to, just as a little homage to days gone by, I want to make it into an annual border and see how it goes. I've never really, I came into gardening at a time when people grew bedding plants. They had a rectangular lawn and a 2-foot border around the outside, and they would put in lobelia, salvias, ageratums, alyssum, that sort of thing around the outside, and you could make a few bob. In them days I used to go down the sewage works to get, the sewage works were brilliant. I made loads of money just going down the sewage works and getting tomato plants. The outside of the treatment areas used to be covered in tomatoes around about April time, and you could get hundreds of them, take them home, pot them up, and you could get like threepence each for them, and I sold hundreds of them. Like, you know, yeah, I made a few bob out of that. Getting away from it, in those days, it's what we call half-hardy annuals. That's a plant that you start off with a little bit of heat and you plant out when frosts have gone, but they were always very regimented in the 60s, 70s, and it started to change in the 80s as people got more and more into perennials, and now you very rarely see half-hardy annual beds or rectangular lawns with a little border around the outside. If you do, it's generally somebody of my generation, or a generation probably above me, and as I'm fucking old now, you know, most of them are dead or beyond gardening. But I thought we would do an annual, because after the Second World War, there wasn't plants around, people couldn't afford the heating, there was a restructuring of the country going on, and people were more worried because rationing was still in place, so they needed cheap and easy ways to make things beautiful. Anyway, let me show you something. When I was a kid, if you bought seeds, you tended to go to Woolworths. There really wasn't garden centres. Percy Thrower had opened probably the first one up in Shrewsbury, and they were only just starting to get away. It was nurseries. It's sad to think that nearly all the nurseries are gone and everything's a fucking garden centre now. I'm not keen on garden centres. They're so far removed from plants. But nurseries used to be wonderful places. As a kid, I would get lost in a nursery, and they tended to have a little shop area. I used to love these like 6-inch long smoke things. They were to get rid of moles. They were poisonous, and you used to set them off and shove them in the mole hole, and that was it. And you know, they were like bloody fireworks. And we used to get things like little tubes with these pink tablets, or, well, I don't know what they were, how you would describe them. They were about 3 inches long, and you lit them, and then you got out the glass house pretty quickly because they were lindane smokes, and you can't get it now because it's just poisonous. But every amateur gardener was using lindane, and malathion was the spray of the day, and you know, it would be horrendous now if you look back on it. And this wasn't just for professional gardeners or growers. These were available in the nurseries, and there was no online, you couldn't order anything like that. It didn't exist. But after the Second World War, when we used to buy our seeds, we got, I think it was bees seeds in Woolworths and Mr. Cuthbert's. And Mr. Cuthbert in the late 40s and the early 1950s, after the war, produced a series of handbooks. These were little ones. This is one on annuals. And I opened it up, I read it, it's not very long. I'll have to put some gogs on because Lisa's just started having to wear glasses. Yeah, I shouldn't laugh. Now, that is a plan of the day. This is from 1949, 1951. That's when these books were brought out. They were 9p. That's 9p in old money, which would be about 4p today. Anyway, there's this plan. And I thought, well, most of these aren't going to be available. But Chiltern Seeds, I found almost everything there. Well, I found everything on this plan. Yeah, we see here. And I found all seeds. And I thought that area where we had the spuds, we would copy this. Just for a bit of fun and see how it goes. And I've never really done an annual bed. It's brilliant. It'll probably look like shite, but it doesn't matter. We can have a go. There's things on here like helianthus, sweet peas, lavatera, cosmos, another sort of cosmos, scabious, chrysanthemum tricolour, clarkia, calendula, cornflowers, larkspur, that's like an annual delphinium, nemophila, that sounds like a disease, but I'm not sure what that is. Night-scented stocks. They're another lovely thing. I'm not gonna. It's not gonna make me amorous, but it is a lovely scent. The night-scented stock, but it tends to come out at night, hence the name. It used to be called Mathioli bicornis, and people used to grow those in a thing called mignonettes outside their back doors. Fascinating things. Mignonettes aren't on here. I don't know if I bought a few just for nostalgia's sake. But yeah, Linaria, candy tubs. There's a few things on here. Oh, and add an edging of alyssum. Well, no, fuck. For the alyssum. But it's on here, so we'll do it. Yeah. Gypsophila. Linum. I think that's the thing we used to call as kids bunny rabbits. Yeah. So there you are. That's a little plan for that thing. We'll be starting that. I'll dig it over. The ground isn't very strong, which is a good idea. Annuals tend to like shitty ground. Sorry. Impoverished ground. You know, like something that's not got a lot of guts in it and not a lot of fertilisers. You want to put fertilisers on them. It's fascinating if you take plants out of a meadow. One of the first things I did when I was a kid, I took plants I pinched a load of harebells out of the meadow and I grew them up. I thought I'll flog these because people like meadow plants. But the bastards grew like hell because meadows, it's cut every year and the grass is taken away, nothing, and the soil is weak. But the meadow plants love it. They just flower. They don't get very tall. All they want to do is grow and produce seed. Yeah, well, you know, a bit like young men, I suppose. Anyway, they just want to reproduce themselves and they don't want to fart around with loads of leaves, so you get little growns. And when I took them out and grew them in pots, and I thought, oh, that's some lovely plants here. The fuckers grew about 3 foot and they were nothing like the meadow plants. So if you want the really good colour and you don't want too much leaf, you want them in as weak a ground as possible. That's especially, I found out the hard way with nasturtiums as well. You put them into really good ground and you get masses and masses of leaves, but bugger all by way of flowers. Anyway, that's what we're going to do, and I'm going to use Mr. Cuthbert's 1949 methods. And he even thins them out. So there you are. That's a little project for later on. And we'll be doing this, starting this around April. The timings in here are a little bit different. The one thing I am going to change is the timings. I can come a little bit forward because the weather patterns in 70 years ago were quite a lot different. So I think I can just move everything forward about 4 weeks, I would think. So when it says late May, I'll probably do them early May. So there you go. That's it. Oh, I've got no more to say. Well, I'm quite looking forward to it. It's hard to overestimate the importance of water. In the frosty spell, while this was frozen, I had to keep putting the water blade on to keep the water around the edge of the pond clear of ice. This morning there were 40 blackbirds on here, just drinking and splashing about. It's so important to them in this cold weather. And it's quite funny to watch. There's a little dun up there, I think. Yeah, it is. So it would appear that there's some rabbit problems. Just the one of them. They get under that hedge sometimes, but they haven't been able to find out where it's got in. The tracks were there when it was snowing recently. We'll go findings. So, everything here at Eggleston is looking absolutely fantastic. I think Thomas and Lisa have excelled themselves, and all their helpers, of course. They are, I know they're waiting for a big shipment of perennials that have been dug from the fields, and that's got to be done, but I think they've seen the way forward with trees. There are some wonderful trees here at Eggleston now. You've got all these lovely 2-3 year olds, and they're looking absolutely fantastic. There's absolutely loads of them, and not just ordinary ones. There's some rarer forms of Prunus malus, the crab apples, flowering cherries. This is Pyrachanticleer. I mean, it's just late March or mid-March, really. What's it, about the 19th? And that's in flower. You don't really see that. And then there's all these maidens. I must say, they really have made a cracking job of this place now. It's like a Plantsman's paradise. There's stuff everywhere. It's got a lot more order than when I was here. Organised. I had some sort of like vague order. No, I didn't. It was all over the place, really. The wall is still being used. We were doing a gardens question time last night, and one of the questions was, what can you grow that's rabbits won't eat? This is an old question, but there's some young osteospermums. They won't touch them. Lots of stuff along here coming on, young plants. Look at this. It's nice to see places like this that propagate their own material. There's a lot of stuff, of course, that you can't propagate because it has plant breeders' rights on it these days, but it's just nice to see it improving and continuing in the manner to which it was before. That's how it should be. You have a place and then you build it, and then somebody new comes along and improves on it, new ideas, new ways of doing things. I just think it's wonderful. It's the natural way of things. We're early for blossoms, but it's not going to be long, another 2-3 weeks. We get some warm weather. It gives me so much pleasure to walk around here and see how it's developed now. A year and a half to 2 years after I finished. There's a whole load of young lilacs and hollies and conifers there. I think they must be working on these at the moment because they clear the bed and then the bed is cleaned and sterilised and pressure washed and all the rest of it. John is still doing the borders. He makes a fantastic job of these. I mean, he just plods away at them, week in, week out. And over there is the potager garden. Oh, we're just waiting for everything to burst into life. It's hard these days now because of the economic situation and people are a lot harder up and you don't know how the business is going to go, so you don't know what to prepare for. You know, how much stuff do you grow? But in this business you're always thinking like 2, 3, even 4 years in advance. If you remember around here there used to be a big hedge, but it just died out over the years, so it's had to be opened up a great deal more. The hedge actually preceded my time here, but when I arrived it was about, I don't know, 20% the size it is now. All these roses, there's fantastic roses. I've got some rarer shrub roses and really interesting forms rather than the same old thing. A whole range of them. Half of them I've never even heard of. And there are still some David Austins, because people ask them and they are nicely presented, but they're expensive. Alpines, these are all grown here and propagated here. Looking marvellous. Look at these lovely thrifts. And these phlox are just waiting to burst, and they've all been grown hard. Nothing is being forced. I was in the supermarket the other day and they were selling campanulas in full flower. They should be out in June. Why do you want to put full flowered plants into your garden, flowering in March? I really don't understand it. But there you go. A little update from Eggleston. I am waiting for John to wheel his tool out the shed. It's quite a magnificent tool. What are you going to call it? It's your Wolf Tools Assembly.
Well, it's a little cart. Wolf Garden don't do anything like this, and I wanted something where I didn't have to carry 5 or 6 tools with handles on up around the gardens or on an allotment or anywhere. So basically all I've done is just made this wooden structure with wheels on it, and everything that I need just slots in. Even the handle, which I can wheel it around the garden with, is one of the handles from Wolf Garden, which normally is used for the half moon. So
the edge, it's a very good edge of that, isn't it?
Yeah, so I've made it multi-purpose so that I can use that as the handle for the trolley. It just slides through there and onto a Wolf Garden attachment off an older tool I had, which I cut down, drilled, screwed in.
That just slots on there.
That's the handle.
Ingenious, John.
Yeah.
And there's your knee rests.
There's my knee pad. I also fit a bucket on the end of there. One of these buckets, I'll get one. And when I'm wandering about in the garden, I've got my bucket with me.
That's brilliant.
So,
and you just drag it along from bed to bed, wherever you're working.
Wherever I'm working.
And you've got your secateurs and your hurry.
Yeah, I've even got all the trowels and everything in the back here, and a saw and an even shorter handle. So everything's just there.
This is a good bit of kit. Absolutely ingenious. Yeah. I've got to the stage now with knee pads where I have one with a metal frame so that I can push myself up. You haven't got there yet?
No, I won't be far away though.
It feels like it's been absolutely ages since I've read a poem or we've done a video, so it's really nice to get the chance to do that again. And it's really nice to have Poetry Corner this time in my little cabin in the woods in my back garden here. I know I've bored you with this place before, but it is one of my favourite places. It's just so nice sitting in here now that winter's gone and the cherry blossoms all out. It's just lovely, so it's a really nice place to sit and read a poem. Malcolm came down to ask me to do the poem the other day, and it occurred to me that actually being friends with Malcolm means spending about 85% of your time saying things like, Malcolm, you do know you said that out loud, don't you? And Malcolm, that's not appropriate, and don't scratch that, Malcolm, you'll make it worse. And even on odd occasions, Malcolm, put that away, nobody wants to see it. But you know, it's a blessing and a curse because he is entertaining, and you know, that's good. The poem today is by a poet called Claude Mackay, who's a Jamaican poet born in 1889, just at the end, obviously, of the 19th century, so I hope you like it. Someday, when trees have shed their leaves, and against the morning's white, the shivering birds beneath the eaves have sheltered for the night, we'll turn our faces southward, love, towards the summer isle, where bamboos spire the shafted grove, and wide-mouthed orchids smile. And we will seek the quiet hill, where towers the cotton tree, and leaps the laughing crystal rill, and works the droning bee. And we will build a cottage there, beside an open glade, with black-ribbed bluebells blowing near, and ferns that never fade.
Now this was a tree, a Cicidophyllum japonica, or a Katsura to give it its proper name, common name, sorry. I planted this some years ago and it was one of the seedlings, and I don't know why I put it in. It doesn't have the characteristics that I would want. So last year, or the year before, I can't remember when, I cut it back. Now, I have a very good form that was given to me by the late Geoffrey Smith, and that's in the churchyard, Eggleston. It's a beautiful golden colour, and that one is perfect. Now, I can't take seeds from it because it's not going to come true. You don't know what's going to happen. So what we're going to do is put some pieces in here. We're going to graft this, and what I'm going to do is show you a graft that you can use on older trees. It's very often done with apples to change the variety, but I'm going to show you two grafts. One I'm going to use on this. It's when you want to graft something that's already established in the ground, an established tree, and the wood that you're using, the scion wood, is much smaller than the stock. This is obviously a semi-mature tree. Anyway, I'll explain as we go along, but we need to go back to my shed. When I was a young lad, you used to see people wandering around the orchards in Sussex, Dorset, Devon, and very often, certain times of the year, they would have a mallet, a wooden mallet, not a hammer like this, and a little chisel attached to their belts. And what they used to be doing was a thing called cleft grafting. Now, cleft grafting, excuse me, is as it sounds. You form a cleft in a piece of wood or a piece of tree that's still growing. The tree is in the ground. You cut off a branch and you form a cleft and you put in the scion wood. Now, if we take a piece of wood like this, we would call this a scion. Here are the buds. So what we're going to do, we're going to make a point in it, either side of the wood. I'm really just showing you this as an example. So here you can see there's a green layer of cells underneath the bark. This is called the cambium layer, and we need to have the cambium layer on this piece here, the scion wood, against the cambium layer under the bark of this piece. Now, the guys that used to have the mallets and the hammers used to go round and they used to make a little slit in the trees and split them like this, forming a cleft. They would then take the scion, and if you can imagine under this little V, this cleft, under there is a green layer just under the bark and just under the bark there, and you want to line up the layers with this scion wood. So that would be put in there. They would tap it down so that it's nice and firm. And on a piece like this, they might put 2, some would put 3 or 4, but they would probably normally put 2. Now this could be, say, for example, a seedling apple, and this could be a piece of a variety that you wanted, like say a Bramley or a Lord Derby or something like that. It was a way of changing the variety of an apple tree, or putting a piece onto a more vigorous tree. There was all sorts of reasons for doing it. But the cambium, the piece that has the cells, is only connected along this edge here and the edge of the scion there. This would then be filled with wax, or you really, with a cleft, you don't need to tape it that much because it's really wedged in there and it has to be tight. You can imagine as the cells are dividing, if the slightest bit of wind or movement, it would break the combining of the cells. So that is a cleft graft. We're not going to use that. We're going to use an entirely different graft, which I find a little bit less barbaric to do what we want to do with the Katsura. Now, you can get all sorts of grafting equipment, but for the average person, if they want to change the variety of their tree, as long as the rootstock is compatible, you can use basic home equipment. I'm going to use a craft knife or a Stanley blade or Stanley knife, a blunt kitchen culinary knife, you know, just an ordinary, you know, they're not very sharp, are they? An eating knife, I don't know what you call them. Some insulated tape. The only thing I've bought is this Meadow compound. Very hard to get hold of proper grafting wax these days. As I showed you with the Cleft graft, in the old days they used to use a red sealing wax, which you can't find now. If you haven't got this stuff, I bought this on Amazon because I don't do much grafting now. You could use PVA glue, the wood glue, just squirt that all over. You could use ordinary candle wax, it would be hard to get enough of it off. But there's various things you could do, but PVA wood glue's quite good to use. You can just smear it on with a brush rather than squirt it. This is the piece of wood from the variety we want to graft into our tree. Yeah. This is taken from the one at Eggleston. And what we want is preferably some nice pieces of 1-year-old wood, but that's usually quite thin. Thinner than I would like to work with. There's one there. So I'm going to use some 2-year-old wood as well. The buds, well, we're a little bit out of time with this. I was going to do it a couple of weeks back, and then we had a cold spell, and I really didn't want to do it in a cold spell. Yeah. Do this. Do this. That should be enough. Okay, so if we just put those to one side. As I showed you with the cleft graft, what we're going to do now is to make a point on this. You want a nice flat point down both sides. In the old days they just used to use one side. I never quite worked that out why. They would use one like that and then a little piece like that. The graft I'm going to show you will press against the whole of this cambium layer, but why they used to do it the way I was taught, have this little bit on the opposing side, I've never quite understood. You just want the cambium exposed. If you use a budding knife, they're very, very expensive, a decent one, and they have like a bone implant or a plastic implant on the other hand that you can use for prizing out, but we can use this, I'll explain to you in a minute. There we are, they're all prepared. Actually, that one's not very good. Let's just do that one again. That's better. All right. Nice flat surface. Okay. Because this isn't a complete circle, there are low points, so we need to make the grafts onto some high points so that when we bind the scion wood in, it's actually contacting and we can get it nice and tight. So what we're going to do is come down there like that. If you try and prise this bark open with this knife, you're going to cut through it or push through it. So what we do is we can just use right. Okay, so we're opening a flap, and what we're going to do then is just push this down into there. Now the inside of this flap and the outside of the heartwood there, the tree, has got cambium on it. And we're going to get a really good, rather than just the edges of the cambium layer, the whole of the thing is bound there like this. So that's how we do that. I'll just do another one on this rise here. See, there's a low point there. There's no point putting it in there. So we'll come down here like this. We'll get our bollocks. Excuse my language. We'll get our harder knife. Sorry, blunter knife. And if you can just see in there, you'll see that there's plenty of green layer. I can show you from the other side. Can you see that in there, how green that is? Nicely exposed. So let's put another piece down in there. Actually, that's not very... Nice tight fit, and that's it. I'm going to put maybe 3 more on here, and then I'll show you the next stage. Right, so we've got 6 pieces in here. I may not need them all. Now the important thing is to get this nicely bound. I'm using some really old insulating tape. It doesn't really matter what you use, but you need to get this really nice and tight so that those cambiums are really pressed. You could use string. I mean, in the old days they used jute, or raffia was always. Overemphasize the need for tightness. That's not going to move. They need to be really, really tight. So several good wraps. Get it as much pressure on there as you can. These are probably going to stay on there for a year. You really don't want any water getting into this. They're not going to move anywhere, they're nice and firm. What I'm going to do now is just a sealant, so we're going to put plenty of this on. You can't put too much of it, especially around the edges. I've put the tape slightly proud of the top so that we can get a nice bind. we are. That's it. Those are what we call rind grafts. Obviously it's not the perfect time for me to be doing this, but the good thing is if they don't take, you can just chop the top 4 inches off and start again at a different time. If you've got ash or beech saplings in your garden, you could do the same. You could chop off a self-sown seedling and then take a piece of a more interesting variety like this fastigiate golden form, Doik Gold or Doik Red if it was a beech, and graft that in. You can change the variety of an apple. If you've got a seedling apple, you could put something in a variety that you like. Maybe you've got a friend that's got an apple that you really like. Take some pieces and put it into one you have that you don't like. There's so much you can do with it. All you've got to do is check the compatibility. There's no good trying to put an oak onto a beech. But there are some beautiful red oaks, and sometimes you get self-sown seedlings in your saplings in your hedge or your garden. Don't just dig them out or chop them off. Perhaps they might be suitable for a bit of cleft or rind grafting. It's just a thought, and it's something that you can do, well, 2 or 3 times throughout the year. You can do it in the spring, you can do it in midsummer or late summer, you know, as you get towards autumn. Some people do it into autumn, and as I say, if it doesn't work, just chop the top 4 inches off and try again at a more suitable time. Now these are the Trilliums that were sowed back in 2020, so 3 years ago. They're coming through fine. We missed 21 and 22, we sowed those ones over there. Now the seeds are just starting to germinate, but they won't really show until next year. They tend to put the radicle, the little root down first. But there's quite a lot here, they're doing quite well. You see there's probably 200 or 300 or more. Don't know, but they've all got to be pricked out. They'll do well. And growing Trilliums is such a long-term thing from seed. Once you get a good stock, you can grow them. You can divide them, which is a much more efficient way of doing them in many respects. I really have to tidy this sort of corner up of the garden, Sunniside here. I was talking about these Trilliums. I hope you can hear me because it's very, very windy today. These Trilliums, now I need to prick these out into trays, and then they need to go somewhere shady. Not full shade, but a dapple shade. Many years ago, when you had an old glass house or an old tunnel, when they started having tunnels, they used to turn them into what they call lat houses, and they used to use roofing laths. They'd lay them across the roof like this and then miss one, so you'd get a shade, 50% shade. As the sun went across the sky, each area would get a certain amount of sunlight, so you develop a shade. You can look them up on Google. I'm sure they'll have lat houses. I think it's pronounced lat. They're just roofing lats. I'm sure in other areas of the country they have different ways of pronouncing it. But what I've done with some old scrap wood here is, at the bottom of the shed workshop here, I've just put a cross piece. At the bottom I just added a spare bit of 4x4, a couple of bits of old rail down the side, and just screwed them together. And over here I've just put a nail in where every second lat, so I would get them like that. Put a nail in there and then miss one out and put the next one in. And these are all movable. I can just, if I want more shade, I can add more, or I can put them closer together. It's a very effective way. Modern methods, they use green shade netting. You can get 30%, 50%, 70%. but it just sinks. You've got to make it really tight. That was just some scrap wood. This is just perfect. It doesn't look too out of place. It's much more use than a cold frame, to be honest. If you're growing things like Trilliums or Pulmonaria divisions, anything that likes a little bit of shade, works really well. I've got them running north to south, so that as the wind crosses, you see with my shadow, you can see that if I just do that, each area will get a little bit of sun and a little bit of shade as the sun crosses the sky. As the old saying goes, necessity is the mother of invention. And here are the little Trilliums I've been pricking out. I've still got lots to go at, but they are just going in there nicely. You can see, there they are, and they just work really well, and they'll get the shade they need. Perfect. And cost me nought. I should have been born a Yorkshireman.
Hello, love your bowls. Hello, Papa.
Yeah, the bowls are lovely.
Totally love. Oh, you're videoing.
I am.
Hi.
I am. I've got a question for you.
Oh.
Your eye problem.
Oh yes.
Is that right? Thomas thought floaters were a digestive problem.
Yes. Yes, he
Did he?
Yes, he did.
God, he's
Apparently.
thick, isn't he? He's
No,
thick.
he's not thick.
He is.
He spent his formative years in the potting shed with you, and that's
Right.
corrupted him.
And he thought.
Cobwebby floaters.
Cobwebby floaters.
Cobwebby floaters in my eye, from which I am suffering badly. He thought was something, well, a lot worse than that, shall we say.
What, you mean something on the Bristol stool chart? Like a number 6?
I'm not sure.
Look at your
Very
long
good.
suffering husband there. Look, a poor bloke.
Give him away. Look at his little face. You need to talk about long suffering.
And that dog is starving.
I know, bless, look, skin and bone.
Skin and bone.
Would you like a little treat? Would you like a little treat? Come on then, because you've only had 6 today.
Oh, God, look at it.
There you go. Are you going to sit? Good girl. Ah, that's lovely.
Did she have your finger?
Yeah, just slightly, but it's okay. It's okay.
Oh well. Anyway, I hope you recover.
Oh, thank you.
There's nothing worse than floaters when they keep bobbing about and you can't get rid of them.
Do you know what? I feel a bit... Oh, wait, what are we talking about?
I mean in your eye.
Are you talking...
I don't mean third flush. When you're visiting somebody's house
Actually, I don't know what...
and you think, oh my God,
Wait.
they're going to know what I'm doing and it won't go
Are
away.
you actually trying to let us believe that...
Wrap
they'll
it in
invite
toilet
you
paper is the answer.
to their houses? I can't quite believe... They'll only invite you once, that's for sure. We like the bowls you've made.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Really nice.
Excellent. Right, well, I've got nothing more to say to you that's of any intelligence. It would just be wasted.
You know, a bit of warning would be nice before we talk about my bowel movements for the world.
But you haven't got bowel movements.
That's the thing, I haven't got. I'm
It's eye floaters.
perfectly, properly functioning in all of the departments.
Oh, I'm very pleased to know that. Oh, I'm off now.
Did you get them, Malcolm?
What, floaters?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eye ones.
Yeah. Well,
Did
when
you
I had
have
those
all the
split
time?
retinas,
Yeah.
I have to keep an eye out for them. They call it something like something storm or some I can't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's,
So, I haven't had the curtain thing. Have you had the curtain thing?
yeah.
That's
I
scary.
don't like that.
Yeah.
I didn't like the eye operation either. I turned this, I don't know what I've got this going for.
Oh, is it still going? Oh, I thought you switched it off.
Sound like a couple of old farts comparing their illnesses.
Yeah. And the bowel movement.
And yeah, well, that's coming, isn't it?
It's only a matter of time, isn't it? Before that's...
Are your bowel movements all right, Phil?
Phil's perfect. He's fine.
How do you know?
I'm not.
Share
I
a house
function
with him.
normally.
He's a normal functioner. He's a one flesh man.
Oh God, what a terrible subject.
Honestly, I thought I might get some sympathy for my eye situation, but
No,
it wasn't.
come to the wrong place.
Yeah, I knew that really.